It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 367. Tonight I'm joined by Emo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Go Team 750.
Grace.
Hi.
Kodra.
Thwompsound.wave.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hi.
Tam always sounds so unbothered by whatever nonsense Kodra does beforehand.
It's Desert Bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Desert Bus is this week.
Yep.
And which means if you're listening to this on Sunday morning, it is almost certainly still going.
And they had one of the first night's memes was they had an hour of silence periodically interspersed with the Mario 64 thwomp sound. So they would just be talking and all of a sudden, whoa!
That's delightful. It is very LRR.
It is. They're back half in person.
So we recorded a double episode, which means we took off last week, and Kodra saved us from having a misnumbered show.
Mm-hmm.
Because I apparently just incremented the number.
Yep.
But yeah, so I know you're probably all tired of me talking about New World, but I have some things to talk about New World. Because when I last talked about New World, I had just dinged 60. And now I have effectively had 3 weeks of being level 60, which means I have done a lot of stuff at the end game. Or at least a certain amount of things at the end game. Including raising my watermark. Like, we've talked about how bad that system is, but like, really in practice, it feels worse than I initially said it was.
That seems concerning. You seemed very down on it when you were talking about it.
I thought this was bad, but now having experienced it, I think it's really bad.
It's even worse, yeah. So it does not go up very fast. Also, you can still randomly get crap items that are way under level. So effectively, my armor is up to around 575 out of 600. And my weapons are question mark, because so I now understand the system more intimately. Armor is just a single watermark. So like, doesn't matter if you're wearing light or heavy or medium, armor drops are all on the same table. Along with them are shields, because for whatever reason, shields are misidentified as a weapon, but actually are counted as armor. So, all of that stuff now drops in a range that, as I understand it, is like, so I've watermarked at 575. So, in theory, I can get 585 or 565 items. And that's a gross generalization of how it's working. But every single weapon is its own watermark. But do you know what's even worse than that? Every single jewelry slot is its own watermark.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Do you know what doesn't drop very often in the world?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, wow.
So, like, some of my weapons are really high. Other weapons are just lagging behind. For whatever reason, I can't get hatchets to drop at decent levels. So I love hatchets, but I'm going to have to buy them from the market from now on because apparently that's not wanting to increase. So yeah, like there's even more asterisks to the system. It seems like the level of the thing you kill has a soft cap associated with it. So like killing level 60s allows 500 plus items to drop and it to begin watermarking. But 61 mobs watermark higher and 62 mobs watermark higher. So essentially you want to be grinding whatever the highest level mob you can possibly do is. So I have been spending a lot of time in Murkguard, which is basically the end-game open-world area where Thorps at and all the corruption's at, and it's a town that's been taken over by corruption. And there is a loop called the Priest Farm. And this is the point at which this game brings back every memory of EverQuest I ever had.
Is that a good thing or not?
It's a mixed bag because, like, on one hand, I really like the camps that players have decided are things. On the other hand, it's a camp. So you're going to stand there forever and kill the same thing over and over and over and over.
Hooray!
So things I've gotten really good at is manipulating Mob Aggro. If you pull something and then hop up on something and go prone, you can reset Mob Aggro. So the priest camp involves basically moving between 3 areas on the map using rooftop parkour to drop down, kill a priest, get back up on the walls, run around to the other one, drop down, kill a priest, get back up, drop down, kill a priest, and the final leg of this is you run out across this bridge, and there's all these little caster mobs on the bridge, but nobody fights those because they're just as tough as the actual boss we're going to fight. So you run out to the end of this platform, hop up on a monument, and everybody grabs some floor. And you wait for everything to reset, and then you hop down and kill the boss, and then move on with your life. Problem is, this is an open world area. Like, people are moving around in it constantly. So it is not uncommon for you to be in the middle of fighting. None of the mobs are actually called priests. They all have specific names. They're just generically referred to as the priests. So you're in the middle of fighting this boss, and someone comes running across the pier, which means they're going to drag everything with them. So you have to make an opportunity cost of, do we reset the encounter or do we just push through, loot, and run? Because when you down that priest, you basically bail off the side of the cliff and run back around to start the process of hitting the other 2 priests on the way up.
How many people are usually involved in this?
Preferably, it is a solid group to a group and a half, maybe 2 groups.
Is there, like, I was going to say, like, one of the things in EQ was, well, I guess no, that's not true. In EQ, it was just loot was per drop. There wasn't per player drops, and so you kind of wanted to scale things down. There's no reason to stop you from just having, like, everyone do this.
Yes, there is. And this is where it gets real shitty.
Oh, wow.
Per kill, that boss is going to drop personal loot for about 5 people.
Oh.
So if there's 2 groups, that means half the people aren't going to get loot every time it's killed.
Cool.
So, in theory, if you can do it with a single group, you'll want to do it with a single group. But it goes more quickly and more smoothly if you have a couple stragglers. So it becomes, again, this opportunity cost of, do we have a couple extra DPS to smooth this out and potentially get dry runs where you're not getting loot? Or do you limit it just to a single group, but also you don't have a say in it? Like, I can just walk up and follow you around.
Yeah.
And, like, there is this person that does not speak English that has a really bad macro, spamming for somebody with 600 eye level gear to do the priest farm, but also stands up on the rooftops and takes pot shots at mobs, training them onto you while you're fighting, and occasionally draws aggro from the priest, causing the priest to not be able to path up to them and reset. It's EverQuest all over again, because, like, all of those things happened in EverQuest. So yeah, like, I've gotten really good at avoiding aggro and kind of dodging my way into the city, because, like, to get to the priest camp, you have to cross half of an elite zone full of bosses and things that will just murder you mercilessly.
Cool.
And there is a type of mob that we lovingly refer to as Thorps. They're actually commanders, but they look like Thorp, the guy you fight in the tutorial. And they have a giant flaming sword. And if you're not really good at dodging, it will charge you with the flaming sword and one-shot you. So you have to be very good at timing your dodge to avoid getting one-shot if you're the one who pulled Thorp. But, like, the thing is, I know I've just described it as this horrible experience, but it's fun as hell. Like, to skirt the edge of aggro on all these things and carefully pick your way through the zone to take out the 3 things you actually wanted. And as I was there, like, so when I first started there, the groups I was in can only do 2 of the priests, which meant you had some lag time. But then, you know, several of us worked out a way to get to a 3rd priest. And basically, we rewrote the way the farm works for the entire server so that now everyone is running 3 priests. Because, like, there's a certain way you can run along a specific wall. And we're like, you know, we know there's another priest that we pass on the way in. And nobody was even killing that 3rd one. It's not even marked as an elite mob on any of the maps that exist for the game, but it has the exact same loot table as the other 2. So, yeah, like we've gone through this process of evolving over the last couple weeks.
Sure,
And this is just like one camp. There's a bunch of different camps.
I was going to say, I too enjoy stealth runs.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I am not the most stealthy person in the world, but like, when it is stealth or death and loot is on the line, I am capable of being stealthy, I guess.
I feel like you might have enjoyed stealth runs back in WoW.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I would have had I played a class that actually did it.
Yeah.
I did some of them, but Feign Death had a long cooldown.
Yeah, Feign Death was not enough.
But we've also found several other mobs that you can take on. Like, I found a dude up in Eden Grove, which is this nature zone that, for whatever reason, is a 62 silver elite, but happens to drop, like, this really wide loot table and spawns every minute. And if you're real careful, you can solo it. So it's better yet if you've got a couple people. So, like, it's a duo or a trio. So me and Ellie and Warren have gone up there and worked on their snapshot, because, again, every time it drops, there's a chance of getting a better item, which means the next time it drops, there's a chance of getting a better item. And that specific camp, for whatever reason, drops logging gear and luck gear out the wazoo. So it is a good way to go get a luck set or a logging set. But yeah, like, so that is one thing that I have done in the end game. Another thing that has happened spontaneously on the server is the birth of the Zerg. And I'm sure Thalen has seen these recruitment messages in chat, and I don't know if Grace has. But...
I have all of my chat turned off except for guild chat.
So a friend of mine, someone that is now my friend, wasn't originally my friend, decided spontaneously that, hey, we should create a thing that makes it easy for people to go into these elite and get all their chests, because there are elite chests that spawn in these high-end zones that can drop all sorts of rare stuff, but, like, you have to fight your way to them, and you can loot them every day. So at 6:30 server time, every single day, the Zerg start, and it goes from the mines of Mirkgard to Mirkgard City, of the corruption portals surrounding Mirkgard, to Reekwater, and does Siren's Grotto and Forecastle, whatever. Forecastle.
This sounds a lot like both FF14 hunts and also the Hero Point Zerg.
Exactly. It's a lot like, it reminds me of Guild Wars 2 and or the Hunt Train, because, like, it's this drop in, drop out thing. Everybody's in individual groups, and, like, this train runs in and out of buildings, looting chests, taking out bosses, you know, looting, like, the elite chests. And it looks hilarious to watch this stream of people going into a building and then jumping out the window of the building and going into the other building. It's like this whole Lemmings thing, and it's delightful. But, like, it's cool because you end up with, like, so much random loot, and again, it ends up, giving you a chance at watermarking, and you get resources for crafting, and, I got 3 legendary patterns to drop tonight, and all of the PvP guilds are pissed about it.
Boo-hoo.
Because we are distracting their members from their war initiative.
Well,
That's actually kind of hilarious.
That's hilarious.
Like, there were 2 or 3 of them last night in faction chat shit talking how useless these Zergs are, and you're not going to get anything from it, and whatnot and whatnot.
the grapes were sour anyway.
So
Man, it does remind me how like almost all of the posts are like, why does anyone PvE in this game? This is clearly an only PvP game. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you are.
Yeah, we're finding all the PvE players and doing nonsense with them.
Yeah.
So, speaking of, and this is probably me winding down my rapid fire topics. So I think the last time I talked about some server drama, Jade.
Yep.
So the whole Jade throwing
And yellow being off the map entirely.
Yep.
And yellow was dead on our server, and yellow was just never ever going to recover.
So what ended up happening is it created this power vacuum in Covenant, and a handful of groups switched over from Syndicate over to Yellow and started bolstering the groups over there, and that's where Gold Rises came from, which is mostly some Syndicate people that came over and a handful of straggler Covenant players that they were trying to get back together and start taking territory. And that was fine. Like, that is wave 1 of Syndicates going to Covenant. Then, I think it's 2 weeks ago, out of the blue, Planet X and Apex Fishing defected from Syndicate. AKA, these are the 2 biggest PvP groups on the Syndicate.
One of which was the guild that controlled Everfall.
Everfall.
Like I logged in one day and into Everfall, and like it's controlled by a different guild, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
It was controlled by a guild called Mendicate, which was a rename of Apex Fishing. Because you can't faction shift a company. Companies can't change allegiance. So members can leave and the members themselves can shift, but a specific company is locked to a faction. So they ended up handing it off to the guy that runs Syndicate Discord, who's a good guy, and he's done a lot to keep that Discord running and try and create it as a neutral ground between all the companies. But also, like, he doesn't have any idea of how to wage war or successfully defend a territory, and he was handed a guild bank that I think had 150,000 gold in it at the time. So we had like 4 days to try and figure out what the hell we were going to do. And I say we because I'm in the leadership chat that's on this Discord. And there was like a 3-hour long Discord meeting last Saturday night. I thought it was going to be like a 15-minute thing, but no, it was a 3-hour long meeting to discuss how in the hell we stand a chance of holding Everfall. Newsflash.
The answer is we don't.
So here's the thing, is Apex and Planet X essentially were the leadership of every single place on Syndicate. And what I mean by that is, like, they may not have been the person that held the territory, but they were the group that was organizing the war effort. They were the ones physically calling shots in the war, doing the comps, basically organizing all of the groups sent a squad or 2 of people to them, and they would make a war happen. And to kind of spread out the territories, various other groups claimed territory, but realistically it was Apex and Planet X plus whoever was fighting for that territory that were fighting that war. With them gone, we have no planning infrastructure for war. Like, we just don't as a faction.
So is part of this that you need a whole bunch of different companies so that you can spread out the time of week that wars can happen, so you can just be constantly at war? Okay. I was like, why doesn't
so that you have enough people to defend. like if one company holds multiple areas, and both of those and multiple of their areas get thrown into conflict simultaneously, then both of those wars are happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why you spread it out amongst other companies.
They're not exactly happening at exactly the same time, but they're happening 30 minutes
within
apart.
Yeah, within the same window.
The way that the infrastructure works, you can't be in two wars at once.
Yeah.
And there's like a 30-minute lead-up time to a war or invasion when you initially get invited by the system. So it overlaps. So basically you have to have an A team and a B team. And right now, okay, so in our heyday, Syndicate held 7 territories. That is the best we ever did. We hold 2 territories now.
So I mean, that makes sense. 7 is 1 per day, right? Like you find the time that your company can defend each day, and then you just go to war each day with that company. But like with a bunch of puppet companies controlling the territory. Got it.
Essentially, yeah. They spread out the hours so that like no territory overlap. Now we're down to just 2 territories, and they're both held by the same company.
I mean,
now like the problem is Blades of Datong is a great company, but they also don't speak English. They're a Chinese language guild, and they're actually made up of, I think, 3 different guilds. So there's 300 total people that are Blades players, but also most of them don't speak any English. So it is very hard for Blades to actually support other war initiatives because, communication is very key in one of these battles, and they also don't want to fight on behalf of everyone on the server. So, like, their roster isn't that deep to be able to basically, like, fight wars for everyone else. They hold 2 territories. Brightwood is the one they really care about, and Ebonscale Reach is their practice zone. And essentially, they always send the A-team to Brightwood, and they always send their learners to Ebonscale Reach, so that they're always training the next group of combatant. But like Blades has like a single squad or so of English speaking players that will help out other people, but somebody else is going to have to organize these battles, and like we just lost a bunch of territory, and it's going to be that way for a while.
Well, and I mean we're at that point in the game where people are kind of drifting away from the game. Like we're not gaining server population at this point.
So that's a whole other topic. So Minda is, for the most part during prime time, we have around 600 players, down from 2,000 players. But also, like, that sounds kind of dire, but we're doing better than 80% of the servers in the US East area. Like there are servers that have like 20 to 40 players during prime time.
Yikes.
Damone Kim is a YouTuber, and for a long time the server, super high pop crowd. But now there's like maybe 200 players in prime time, and he estimates that that's like 6-7. So mergers are coming. They've outlined how mergers are going to work. It's going to frustrate a lot of people. So basically, like, there is, whatever the server is that's in the best standing is going to have another server merged into it. And so server A is, say, a server with like a decent population. Server B is a server with a very low population. Server B players are going to lose all territory. Server A players are going to, every company that had territory on server B is going to be in reimbursement. They said 50,000, which they said was 3 times most of battle, but also that's
wow. How much money does I know the answer to this. How much money do you make a week for holding a territory like Everfall?
Like holding Everfall makes about 150K a week.
So you get 50,000. Nice.
Yeah, but like other territories effectively cost money. They don't make enough money to like pay the bills. So as a result, they're going to centralize the auction house. And so So how that's going to work is, say I have relocated to Brightwood. That's where I basically hang out now because it's very close to the north. I spend most of my time in the northern zone. And if I purchase something on the auction house, my taxes for purchasing the item go to Brightwood. The taxes for posting the item go to whatever territory the item was posted in. However, there's a loophole.
Isn't there always?
If you go to one of the northern territories, can't be held. They have no tax rate.
Oh, nice.
So if you trek your stuff up to there and post in one of those little outposts, you don't get charged any taxes for buying or selling. You also can't gain faction with those territories, so you'll never have anything bigger than the initial bank size up there. But I mean, folks have already figured out that the heavy traders are going to go up to Eden Grove or Great Cleave or Shattered Mountain and post their stuff up there.
Yep. And then you primarily make money off of crafting taxes. And what's bigger, crafting or property taxes?
Property taxes is next to nothing. So you can anybody can go into town and go into basically the bursar's office, for lack of a better term, and look at the ledger of how much a town made. And it shows I think 4 weeks worth of ledgers that you can look at. And it breaks it down this is how much they made off of crafting. This is how much they made off of property taxes. This is how much they made off the auction. And Forever Fallen Windsward, hands down, the lion's share, I would say a little over half of everything that was made in those territories was off of auction house. So if they made 150,000, 100,000 of that was the auction house, because it's the whole Ironforge Orgrimmar effect.
So it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot less attractive to hold territory, which then in turn makes territories a whole lot less attractive to go and do work in, because the town boards are going to be empty.
Yep.
And all of the equipment, machines, crafting stuff are going to probably not be fully upgraded.
Because again, we have still never won a single invasion. So every week there's an invasion, and every week four to six things get downgraded that have to be re-upgraded. So that was absolutely something that hit me this week. An invasion downgraded the workshop in Brightwood from a tier 4 or a tier 5 to a tier 4, which means I could no longer make ironwood fishing poles or orichalcum gathering, aka the things that I had been skilling up off of. And I had a bank full of material sitting there rotting for days until enough people finally did the town board to upgrade the equipment back to 5. So that's another problem that I see with this game is the limited server size means you're not really ever getting a fresh influx of players all the time. And because everything requires the tier before it, I ran around today harvesting things in Ebonscale Reach, skinning boars and wolves and tigers, and literally the ironhide I'm skinning.
Yeah, ironhide isn't worth anything.
And ironhide is useless. I can buy as much ironhide as I would ever want for the minimum possible price, because you need so much of everything that comes before it to even make it useful. And once you exit, I think once you're a level 40 zone, you're getting nothing but ironhide. You're not getting any of the resources that you need to turn the ironhide into anything else.
Yeah.
And the same problem.
Animals like sheep and rabbits will still drop rawhide, but that's about it.
The problem is happening with orichalcum, with ironhide, with wire fiber. Basically, whatever the highest end resource is, you need to fight to farm it. But you could give a crap about the actual resource itself. You need this super rare, need to be wearing a luck set drop that you then turn into the end game materials. So I need orichalcum plus this super rare thing called void ore. And like one of my friends spent all day harvesting orichalcum, going around the world. He harvested 27,000 orichalcum. He got a single void ore in that time. And you also need cinnabar and tolvium, which are also pretty rare drops. So I think he got like 20 and 30 of each of those during that same time. And combined, you turn it into, I think, a void ingot, I think is what it's called. And that's the stuff that allows you to craft the quote-unquote in-game item level 600 armor sets. So, like, there's this land run for all of these in-game resources, but nobody cares about the actual material itself. So, we're basically having to strip mine the world for resources and throw away the resources because
they're not even worth putting on. They're not even worth putting on the auction house.
I mean, it's literally Veruca Salt's dad's factory of opening candy bars looking for the golden ticket.
Yeah.
And like throwing the candy bars away because, like, I'm still using orichalcum to skill up off of, but most people don't care about the orichalcum. I've had people just offer to give me orichalcum.
Whereas I am doing the much more sensible thing where I'm now level 35 and I haven't left Everfall ever, because why would you ever leave Everfall? I need to get to level 30 there. And it's where all of the good materials are. I am so sick of Everfall, but I have to stay in Everfall.
I mean, there's a lot of iron in Nether Zone.
No, it's not even that. It's I want a good house in Everfall. So I'm trying to get to level 30 with Everfall.
So you're wanting to buy your tier 4 straight away.
That was the plan, because it's going to be cheaper. I'm currently level 23.
So I went down the other strategy, and my tier 4 was the last house I bought, just so I could have some teleports easily. So I went for the strategy of putting houses in zones that connect to a bunch of other zones I might want to go to. So I have a house in Weaver's Fen, I have a house in Brightwood, and I have a house in Windsward. And from Windsward I can get to Monarchs and Cutlass, and that's really just, and First Light, I guess, pretty fast if I want to. From Weaver's Fen I can get to Restless Shore and Morningdale, and Reekwater really fast. And from Brightwood, I've got easy access to all the northern areas. But because of that, I'm not burning through Azoth. And let me tell you, Azoth does become a problem because my banks are so full that I am always carrying like 600, 700 pounds of stuff on me out of my, 1,100 total carry weight, which means just teleporting one zone over is like 400 Azoth. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, also you've lost a whole bunch of Azoth reduction things now.
Yep, everything.
Yep, and boy, like, it's a weird feeling of, well, I have no control over this, but now the game sucks.
I mean, it sucks, more than it did, yeah. But also, like, at the same time, because I carefully placed my houses, it doesn't impact me as much as it could have. Like, if I were not judicious with the placement of my houses to where all the zones I care about going to, I can teleport to a house, and the most that will ever cost me is like 40 Azoth to reset my house portal. But I do run a lot of places. Like, that's the only other negative, is like I spend a lot of time running. But supposedly in the next patch, they're applying a buff to roads to where if you're running a road, you get a speed boost, which will, in theory, help a little bit, just a tiny bit. Today we ran Grace through a couple dungeons and managed to pull Tam through a couple dungeons.
Dungeons seem fun. I currently am not on a server with you guys, so I can't really play them with you, but they do seem fun. I
have really mixed feelings about them. Now that I've run a couple different ones, I've run one of them a few times. They seem like they would be super fun if you were DPS. And they're kind of not as a healer. I don't know how they would be as a tank. It just feels so chaotic. Yeah, it's because of the way the combat works in this game. It's not traditional MMO healing at all, and I don't know. It doesn't feel like I have any control at all.
I mean, from my understanding, it seems like you have very little control, and what you're actually doing is just encouraging people to stand in your healing.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good, and it's kind of necessary. Like, it definitely helps to have healer, but being a healer does not feel great.
You're a healer where your primary method of healing is what's it called? The light wells.
Light well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, as you're saying this, I'm like, wow, that must be really unsatisfying, where it's like I can provide you resources, and all I do is provide you resources. I don't actively make your bars go up. I need you to make your bars go up.
And there's an ability, and I don't know in which tree it's in, but like it's one that a lot of people take, where you basically paint the boss with a light well.
Mm-hmm.
So where the boss is actually radiating healing from the boss. But like it sucks for packs of things because like they die so quickly. Like, is it even worth casting the thing that radiates healing or just putting a light well down?
Well, I mean, on the plus side, like the thing that radiates healing is called Beacon, and it stays if the thing dies. Also, sometimes it sticks to an ally instead of an enemy. It just kind of depends how you happen to have angled your mouse when you hit that button. So it's just, yeah. I mean, it's fine. I have, a projectile that does a little bit of damage, and anyone around it gets hot. I have the sticky light well, and then I have basically an ability that heals myself and anyone around me and does a cleanse. So, because there is an ability that lets you do direct healing to a target, that feels awful. Like, the way that works feels terrible. Just trying to navigate, like, how to actually target the person that you want and use that button in a timely manner. It does not feel good. So...
The thing about how we've talked about, you put a card in some of your abilities to act in every attack. So in practice, the game has threat meters. It doesn't message them to you ever, but it has threat meters. So if you look at the name plate of an enemy, if there is a kind of pulsing red glow on the outside of the nameplate, that means you've got aggro. So it now allows me to actually see, do I have aggro on everything? And hint, for most of the fight, I don't. I have a taunt, which acts as a taunt, and it raises me to the top of the aggro list for a period of time and locks it to me. But, like, my taunt is a 45-second cooldown. So I can't rely on hard taunting to hold aggro. And based on what I've realized, it takes me about 3 hits against a target before it sticks to me. Now, if I'm the one who pulls, I get instant aggro, and aggro is somewhat sticky, so it's easier for me to maintain aggro. But do you know what this game doesn't reward? Not randomly taking pot shots at shit. Everyone is always hitting things before I can get anywhere near them, because the game doesn't have a sufficient gap closer that I can use. So that means, like, I am losing the battle from the second we pull. And it takes me a while to lock things down under control again. I love Warren, but Warren has never let me pull, ever. He pulls it, and I chase him around with the target. And I don't know if he doesn't, I don't know if he doesn't realize how bad aggro is in the game. And maybe it's just because I fight my ass off to hold it. But, it takes me the first 10 seconds of combat trying to reestablish aggro, which, like, I don't know if you noticed, you know, Grace or Tam, I kind of flail around like a dervish for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's me just trying to get all the things. It's not me purposely trying to move out of the healing, but also, like, I'm chasing stuff down, trying desperately to get aggro on it, so it's me and not everyone else.
I mean, clearly this game should be trying to teach you things, like maybe you do need to allow the tank to establish aggro.
But I don't think this game doesn't seem to care.
Might not actually be as true. I mean, everyone's in... Okay, I guess it's not true in PvE that everyone's in heavy armor. But, like, the game does not sufficiently reward not being in heavy armor.
Isn't that a bug that they're fixing, though?
Yeah.
It's not a bug, but they're fixing it.
I thought the percentages didn't actually work, is what I heard. But maybe that's misinformation. There's so much misinformation on this game.
Was a bug. Resilience basically caused me to take 30% less damage overall off the top instead of 30% less crit damage as it was intended. And they fixed it. And now everything hurts so much worse. Like, it was like overnight when that patch changed, I went from being able to solo things to not being able to fight things in a couple scenarios. So, like, there's been bugs like that have been really frustrating, that everybody got used to doing things one way and then it gets flipped and then everybody's having to readjust. But, like, all of that said, I still enjoy group combat. I enjoy it more if my group allows me to set up the pull. But it's also why things like the Zerg are appealing.
Yeah. That sounds so much more fun.
You can get all the reward of doing the thing without any of the responsibility, because, like, this steamrolling army of people is either confusing the hell out of the mobs and you can just run past things, or so much momentum that they can just shred them.
I also think that, like, the complaints that I have about PvE healing, I suspect would make PvP healing in this game actually kind of fun. Because you don't have to flail around trying to target people, you just put your heals down, and if people need them, they can use them.
Strategically objective.
Mm-hmm. Like, that seems good, but for PvE purposes, it doesn't feel good.
So, like, as a P-Tank, I've done a bunch of output the last podcast, and as a PvP tank, I run around with a hammer and a great axe, and I use gravity well to collect everybody on a point, and then I stun them, and I basically do that to let my team destroy them as I'm standing on an objective, tick up a timer. And healers in that scenario, they're just keeping me blanketed so that I, as a thick boy, as they refer to them, stand on the point and hold the line. And I'm either blocking, or I'm stunning, or gravity welling. That's basically what I alternate back and forth between. I occasionally yoink things with Reap, but, like, I'm there to push into an objective and stand on it until we capture. So, like, I could absolutely see that this is healing designed for PvP. It is healing that is miserable for PvE. But even then, it's not that bad when you're doing an open world dungeon like that, where you are farming a specific encounter, so as the healer, you can set up for that encounter and basically blanket the area that we're going to fight in. And me as a tank, I am trying my best to keep steering the mob back into that spot. And especially to try and keep from bouncing around and pulling extra adds. That's another thing about tanking that's weird in this game, is because everything has collision, mobs will push you around and there's nothing you can do about it. They will just, like, push you around, so you're constantly having to dodge, to reposition, spin the thing, drag it back into the circle. But it's also given me the revelation that I think I'd like Guild Wars 2 a hell of a lot if it had this style of action combat. Because effectively, the hammer character in Guild Wars for a warrior and the hammer character in New World are kind of the same character.
We should probably move on to another topic. We've spent a lot more time on New World. I'm realizing.
Yes, we have spent another podcast on New World.
Mm-hmm.
So did we talk about Omen Sight or not?
We did briefly. It's the follow-up to Stories: The Path of Destiny. So we talked about that a bit 3 weeks ago.
We did. Okay, then what is Sable?
I believe this is a TAM game. And I believe he might have stepped away.
Oh, here we go. Sable. Yes, I jumped into Sable a while back. Sable is it's a coming of age game that it's billed itself as what if the entire game were side quests, but I feel like that sells itself short. It's this super it's a super fun cell shaded art style where you're this teenage girl in a weird high tech post-apoc desert, riding around on your floating motorcycle, figuring out where you want to fit into the world. And you have sort of the tutorial that teaches you how to make your way around. It's taking a lot of cues from Breath of the Wild as far as you climb. There's a lot of climbing up things, and you can glide and you get those powers very quickly. And then you use them to get around and find places and solve problems and figure out how you want to attach to the world, basically. Because the conceit is everyone in the world wears a mask, and the mask kind of indicates to everybody else what they do and how they fit into society. And so this is you're going out into the world to figure out what mask you want to wear. And in order to do that, you've got to go collect a bunch of masks, and that gives you the, perspective and breadth to decide which one you want to wear. And it's a little janky. I mean, it's definitely like an indie kind of, it's not the cleanest of animations, but it's still fun to play, and it's really soothing. It's got these nice music, and you're zooming across these wide open, peaceful environments. It's got a really interesting writing style that reminds me a little bit. It's not quite all the way to Disco Elysium, but it reminds me of it, because it's not just dialogue, but it's also your character's thought processes. So somebody will say something, and as part of the dialogue, you'll also get your character's kind of stream of consciousness.
Yeah, you said Breath of the Wild. Is it mostly Breath of the Wild and the exploration elements? Is there combat type of stuff?
There's no combat.
Okay.
It is a purely combat-free game, at least as far as I've gotten. The most threatening thing I've run into is a giant beetle that I lured out with some food so that I could go pick some kind of fruit that grows in its lair. Or no, collect shells. I was collecting shells that were used to craft things. And it's interesting to see because there's the Cartographers Guild. And the Cartographers Guild is a bunch of people in balloons that you find it really high up places, so you can see them. It's really easy to find them. And if you climb up enough places, you can get a Cartographers Guild mask.
What do the masks actually do gameplay-wise?
They mostly your anything that affects your gameplay is your clothes other than the mask and the parts on your bike. The masks are kind of the thing you're collecting, although you can wear them. And sometimes when you're wearing them, NPCs respond to you differently based on which one you're wearing. I was able to find the mask of a, famous vigilante and ran around with that for a while. And a bunch of people reacted very differently if I'm running around in that mask, especially the town guard, versus just my regular person mask. But it's very puzzle solving, and you go around, you talk to people, you help people with various problems, you explore. There's a lot of like interesting random places to explore, but it's just a super peaceful game, and it's got a really nice art style. My one complaint is that it desaturates things a little bit more than I would like at night, which doesn't make it hard to play, but it does make it a little monochrome. But otherwise, it's super charming. I enjoy the sort of platforming climbing puzzles. It's got surprisingly sharp writing, and I really want to know what's up with all of the crashed spaceships. This desert is just littered with crashed spaceship wreckage, and I really want to know what's up with that.
This game actually takes place on Jakku.
I guess, maybe. Got a bunch of weird little biomes, collect strange little bugs. I'm not sure why I'm doing that yet.
I mean,
Korok seeds.
Bug collecting is its own reward.
Yeah.
Apparently. They're like weird bug eggs. I don't know. It's definitely the weirdest thing I've run into. But it's mostly been fun to just like wander around this world and figure out what's going on. We've got these nomadic people in the desert, and it's like part of a culture that when a child is of a certain age, they go out into the world and may or may not come back.
I mean, it's a good excuse for an adventure.
It is. But it's interesting, you talk to a bunch of NPCs that like fondly remember their adventure time. One of the things that you can do is you've got this like glider. It's like a bubble that you float around in. And this one person you talk to is like, oh yeah. They're like, oh yeah, it's like, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you to go out on your gliding, which is what it's called. I remember when I was on my gliding, I would like hurl myself off the side of cliffs all the time and float down. It was great.
Reminds me of the Korean pilgrimage.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, I really want to see where it's going. I've been tooling around in it periodically. Because it's like it's really soothing and like journey like to wander around in, but also it's piqued my curiosity. I want to know where it goes. I found a city and it seemed like a pretty decent place.
Okay, I want to know who added Die to this list.
I did.
What? Explanation?
Die is both a comic book and a tabletop RPG created by Kieran Gillen, who tends to do a lot of really high concept things. Like one of his big breakout comics in the past with Jamie McKelvey was Phonogram, the concept for which is basically what if music was magic. He did a run on Journey into Mystery. The concept was basically what if Loki decided to change the story. So this is a comic that apparently the idea came about when he was at a con and somebody was like, remember that old D&D cartoon? I wonder whatever happened to those kids. So it's a 20-issue story. It's 4 5-issue arcs. And the premise is, back in the 90s, when they were teenagers, 6 kids got sucked into an RPG. 5 of them made it out. Now it's 2018, and the game's come back for them. And what the hell are they going to do?
It's like Jumanji.
A little bit. It's a little bit Jumanji. It's a little bit the old D&D cartoon. It's a little bit Narnia. It's a little bit Guardians of the Flame. But it's... And basically the real high concept of it is, what are tabletop RPGs for? What is their purpose? Because without getting into like major spoilers, like this is a world that has been directly and indirectly created over a period of time, sort of. Time's weird. So this isn't one of those like Narnia where no time passes in the real world while you're in the game world. Like they were gone for nearly 2 years when they were teenagers, and when they made it back, like everyone wanted to know where the hell they'd been. So, but also things in the game world seem to have been, again, trying to avoid spoilers. But the short version is Gillen uses this to kind of like go into like meditations on like what is the purpose of tabletop RPGs? Like, what do they do? How did they come to be? And like the Brontes are involved. H.G. Wells is involved. Tolkien, unsurprisingly, is involved. Howard Lovecraft is involved. Gygax, of course, but to a lesser degree than you might expect. Like the main Gygaxian aspect here is the polyhedral dice. But it's a really fascinating comic, and it's short. It's complete now. It just wrapped up last month. I think the final trade paperback of the final story arc came out this month. It's all on Comixology, but it's very thought provoking in a lot of ways, and I highly recommend it. And then also there is an RPG that he developed simultaneously with this. It's still in beta. There's a Kickstarter planned that was originally supposed to happen this year. It's been pushed off till next year due to everything with supply chains. But it basically like if you want to play a game that's and the way the tabletop game works is first you create the real world characters. And you determine their relationships and how they all know each other and all this stuff through a period of basically the game master asking questions about various things, and then then your real life characters create their in-game characters, and then you begin, and the game ends when everybody either decides to leave or to stay. But everybody has to agree. And so that can make things interesting.
Huh.
And there's other interesting like there's other things like he just there needs to be some sort of like fantasy monsters to kill. But but like there's all the problems with orcs. And various other things, but in this world there are what's called the Fallen. And they're basically zombies. And if I go any more in depth, we're getting into spoilers again. One of the character classes. One of the character classes is the Neo, which is basically what if we got some cyberpunk in our fantasy game. They have abilities that they get from the fair, which are Dai's version of fairies, kind of, and they have to be powered by fair gold. Fair gold disappears each day. So your powers only work if you've got this stuff. So also Neos are basically druggies. Like all adventurers like go out and fight monsters. Neos have to, because none of their stuff works otherwise. You've got the Emotion Knights, whose powers are fueled by one of 8 emotions, chosen when they become Emotion Knights. The character in the comic who's an Emotion Knight is a Grief Knight, which means that he is most powerful when he's sad. Joy Knights are terrible fucking people, and you never want to have to deal with them. Because think about what kind of person is really, really happy and remains really, really happy when they're murdering a whole bunch of dudes.
I mean, I may have a game for that Grief Knight to play.
Yeah.
We'll probably get to that next week.
There's the Dictator, which is what if bards were fucking terrifying. The Dictator can basically control people with their voice by like pulling on the strings within them. For the person in every group who never really seems to want to get involved in the deep, complicated story, there's the Fool. The Fool's abilities are all related to luck and, things going well for them when they're not taking things seriously. Like literally half of the Fool's character creation system is look around at all those other nerds. I bet they're still working on their characters. Well, you're done. So here's some stuff to think about while you're waiting for them to get done. There's the Godbinder, which is what if clerics were actually warlocks? The Godbinder doesn't believe in gods. They know gods exist, but there's no call believing in them. They make deals with them. The gods have their interests. The gods can do lots of really cool stuff. You need a god to do something for you? Well, you call on a god that might have that when they're within their portfolio. You ask them for a favor. Then you make a deal with them. Maybe they want you to do something for them right now. Maybe they're going to hold on to that favor and make you do something for them later. Maybe that thing is going to be really terrible. Maybe if you're real lucky, they think what you're wanting them to do is really awesome or hilarious, and they'll just do it for free. But don't expect that to happen a lot. But yeah, it's just a really cool story, as well as a really cool system, and I want more people to know about this because it's very much worth your time.
Have you gotten to play any of it?
I have not. I've read through the rules now that I've finished the entire comic. I've read through the rules to see how they match up with the characters in the comic and the things they did and how that stuff works mechanically. The mechanics, speaking of which, the core conceit of the game is that mostly the game runs on 6-sided dice. There is one set of polyhedral dice, only one. Each character class gets one of those dice. It is the only one in the game. The Dictator gets the D4. The Godbinder gets the D12. The Fool gets the D6. It is not the only one in the game. There's nothing special about it at all. But he gets to ride on it. Basically, the way the Fool's mechanics work is every time he uses one of his abilities that cause him to roll that die, if it doesn't roll a side that has something written on it, he puts a circle around one of the numbers. If he rolls a die with a side with a circle on it, then one of his special abilities goes on. His basically he will have chosen a thing to happen, and it will happen. And then you put an X on one of the other sides. If he rolls an X later on, then something bad happens, and all the X's get removed. And so it's kind of going back and forth between lucky and unlucky. And then the DM will usually be playing the Master, which is the class that gets the D20. The Master knows the rules, and the Master gets to cheat. All of the Master's abilities are based on combining sets of rules that they have access to create effects. And if they don't have access to the rules they need, then they can rules lawyer to try and add them in. But that has a chance of attracting attention. And if you get caught cheating, well, then the fair come to judge you.
It sounds really. I need to.
Yeah, that's definitely what I would recommend first. And among other things, a lot of things in the rules will spoil elements of the comic ahead of time. Just being aware that aspects of these character classes work in these ways, or what the Fallen really are, and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I haven't read a single comic by Kieran Gillen that I didn't just absolutely, love. So I knew this was, when he announced this one, I knew this was one I was going to want to pick up.
Oh, this game is a delight.
Yeah, it's a game about unpacking.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the finest environmental storytelling since Gone Home.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I particularly liked, that was one of the reasons I went to put it on the list and saw that Tam had already done so. We've talked in the past about games being 12 sads out of 10, and how grief is the easy emotion to access, and so that's why so many games go for it. This is a game that evokes emotional responses
all over the spectrum.
Yes, it evokes sadness, not abject grief, but definitely sadness, but also just
joy, relief, satisfaction, joy, anger, despondence. It's got an incredible emotional palette, and it tells an entire coherent, fun story through basically every level is the next time this character moves to a new place and needs to unpack.
Yep. Yeah, the first level is unpacking in your room at the age of 9.
Yeah.
And then
as you get it, you get your own bedroom.
Yeah. And then the one after that is college. on your own for the first time, and then going on from there. And so one of the nice things that that's something that like I would go out on a limb and guess like pretty much every adult person has moved at least once in their life, like close to everyone. In most cases, more than once. So I mean, it's something that is recognizable and easy to understand.
And it's this sort of this interesting, soothing, like Tetris-y gameplay as you try to put your stuff away.
Yeah, it's not particularly challenging. Like some levels are a little more difficult than others, like just finding space for certain things. Like mostly the actual difficulty is a couple levels where there's a thing that you need to find a place for, and it's not immediately obvious where it should go.
Yeah.
And the place where it should go is
usually telling a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like the stories that the game is able to tell just by how you are able to place things.
Yeah. Because at no point in the game do you see the protagonist character or any other character. You are in one or more rooms in a location and have items to unpack. And if other people already live in this place that you are moving into, like when you move in with some roommates, then their things are already there. Yeah. And you learn stuff about them through that. You learn stuff about the main character through the things that you unpack of theirs, through what things from previous unpackings are still around this time, from what things aren't around anymore, what they've left behind.
What the condition of various things is in as you go along.
And basically you see this person who you meet them as like a 9-year-old girl, and you follow them over the next about 20 years, just seeing the ups and downs of their life.
Yeah, I mean, and it's relatively short. Like, I think I played through it. In about 3 hours total.
Yeah, it's around 3 to 5 hours of gameplay. Yeah. It's not a terribly long game.
Yeah, it's not terribly long, but it's just like
but very well put together.
Yeah,
like the art and the sound are just wonderful. Apparently, there's 14,000 individual Foley sounds for all the different possibilities of placing an item on a particular surface. Like they didn't skimp.
Sounds like it was tactile.
Yeah. It's like the particularly with the sounds, like it feels like just picking things up and putting them down in the place that you want them. And in some cases, like trying to figure out like where the heck can I put this thing that it will fit. Rearranging objects out of drawers to make room for this giant freaking hair flattener that takes up an entire drawer all by itself.
Because it makes you think about all the items in your life that are really awkwardly shaped.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, in particular, there's we mentioned the emotional range. Like in particular, there was one level that basically over the course of the level, I just had this like slowly increasing feeling of dread that like this isn't going to go well. Like just the way things, like trying to find places to put things, and the way objects just did not fit in next to what was already there.
Yeah, like they're really good at communicating more than just the literal thing that you're doing. Mm-hmm. In implication through the thing. It was like, oh, this stuff doesn't match.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, where do I put this?
Yeah.
Or the classic roommates thing where it's like, oh, we've got 3 microwaves. And they didn't, I don't think it did this one, but I remember it made me think of the story I was hearing from a friend at one point where they're like, yeah, I went to unpack my microwave and there was already one in the kitchen. So I found a cabinet that was big enough to fit a microwave to store it in because we didn't need it. And I opened it and there was another microwave in there. I was like, where do I keep my microwave?
I mean, that was absolutely a thing. Like, when my wife and I initially moved in together, is like we had 2 full households worth of stuff and tried to condense them into a single household.
Yeah, deciding which things to keep.
Who had the nicer version of things.
Uh-huh.
I've done this thing recently just from having moved away for 1 year, and all of a sudden have the same problem again.
The one that kills me, though, is like every so often there's a thing that you use so infrequently that you have no idea where it's at. And then inevitably you'll go out and get another one because you really need the thing, and now you find it, and now you have multiple copies of that thing. Stuff is weird.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure I've told this story before, but like when we moved into my house, I mean, and granted, I've lived here for 20 years, but like when we moved in 2 years later, there were still boxes in the garage that we had never moved out, like unpacked, and decided that if we didn't use it in 2 years, there's really nothing in those boxes we needed.
Yeah.
It looked charming. It kind of reminded me of the Lo-Fi Beats game or whatever that's called.
Mm. Yeah, because it's
similar art style.
Yeah, because it's pixel art, but like early to mid 90s SVGA pixel art. Like just chunky enough that you can't read the writing on the covers of books. But yeah, it's a very good game that causes some feels, and will have you like feeling very happy at the end.
And I think that's probably time based on when we actually start recording. Any final thoughts?
It's apparently no 750 November, so go play the FF5 Pixel Remaster that just came out, or something, with or without magic jobs. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I would love to play them. I just wish they would come out on the Switch.
I mean, they're on a PC.
I know. I'd just rather play them on Switch. I don't understand why they haven't been released on the Switch.
So that you buy them on Switch again later?
Probably. If they release them on all the systems simultaneously, then you only buy it on the one you really want.
That is absolutely a thing. And they have gotten me before.
I was going to say, they're kind of good at this now, so that's probably what they're doing. Anyway, FF5, whatever version you can get, feel free. Just
I'm just happy it's reasonable to legally play FF5 now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for so long it wasn't. And it's a good
version.
It's been reasonable for a while now. It came out on Game Boy Advance way back. But yeah.
Which is ungodly expensive if you buy the actual.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Sure, now, but there was a while where they were quite cheap to get that way.
Yeah. Luckily I picked that one up back when it was new. But yeah, we don't have to play it on an emulator and switch back and forth between the better emulator and the one that can actually handle transparency. So, yeah.
And if you are new to this series, I recommend no 750 November.
I still have yet to actually...
I mean, that's also a thing you can do. You can just play the game. It just came out. It's quite good. It doesn't have all the extra content that is not good.
Yeah, you don't need any of that anyway.
I've just never actually played through the game with my own choices.
Look, if you could make your own choices, wouldn't they all be samurai anyway?
Knight and samurai, black mage, and white mage, probably?
I understand eventually you just say I'm a freelancer and do hilarious, I quad attack the whole way.
Yeah, I feel like that's the actual answer, is you're just all freelancers.
Yeah, you're likely to finish the game during a normal run with everyone as a freelancer or mime. It's better for magic classes to be mimes, mostly, because you can equip 3 magic abilities, or 2 magic abilities and also a dual cast.
Okay, on that note, good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
See you.